Hey there, Wicked Lovelies. I'm JJ.
I'm Thyme.
And I'm Sarah.
And you're clocking in for The Witching Hour, a podcast where we have a lot of opinions and we are not afraid to share them. Today, we're going to dive into some thoughts on controversy in the industry, talking about ghostwriting, AI, and where we stand with both. So grab your elixir of choice and settle in. We have a lot to share. So I want to start off with asking if y'all think it is ever okay for an individual to take credit for someone else's work and pass it off as their own.
No. No. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say no.
I'm going to say it depends, and let me tell you why. As a former ghostwriter, I gave my permission for someone else to use my words as their own. So I think if the person is aware that it's happening and they have given their consent, then you can pass someone else's work off as your own. But you have to ask first. You can't plagiarize.
So
Right. I don't think that counts though, because were you paid for it?
Yeah.
That's the difference. Like you exchanged goods and services.
But it was still my work.
So the dictionary definition of plagiarism is to steal and pass off the ideas or words of another as one's own, or to use another's production without crediting the source. So were you credited on any of those?
No, that's the whole point of ghostwriting, is that it's a secret
Right.
who actually wrote it.
Yeah. I've done ghostwriting.
I can't believe you actually wrote 50 Shades of Grey.
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
she was but a mere lad.
I was going to say, I was in middle school when that came out.
That checks out with the quality of the text. So,
Well,
congrats on being a ghostwriter for 50 Shades of Grey.
I wish. Although even if I was, I probably would not be a millionaire because
No.
ghostwriters, I don't get royalties for anything that
Yeah, and I actually have some numbers on that I was learning while I was researching ghostwriting and everything, because I feel like ghostwriting felt very niche before I did it. And so there were only I did academic ghostwriting, which kind of gets into a little bit of an ethical place.
That's strange. That's bizarre even.
Yeah,
Academic ghostwriting.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I've done it,
Yeah.
but I was in high school. When someone pays you $20 to write their essay, that's ghostwriting.
Right. But
technically, yeah.
That feels like ethically wrong to me because you're supposed to
is.
be. Oh, okay, great.
I was
Yeah.
16. It was my classmate. It's not like I was in college
Listen.
at an accredited institution.
I was a young child, okay? I was 27.
Yeah, I was literally 50.
I was an
doing
infant.
it. It's fine.
No, I used to do academic ghostwriting on Upwork and Fiverr.
That is so bonkers to me.
So I'm going to get canceled after this. Good thing I'm not teaching anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So, what's your opinion on that then?
I have really complicated opinions on ghostwriting, and I feel like there are times and places where it is acceptable. I feel like I should clarify, by academic ghostwriting I mean academic papers, not assignments. I wasn't writing assignments for other kids. I was ghostwriting on academic publications.
That's even worse to me.
Oh, see, I think that's the same thing as ghostwriting a fiction book.
No, that's worse to me. That's crazy.
Didn't you also ghostwrite college applications though?
Not the applications, essays.
Yeah, the application essays.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait,
that's...
no. Hold on. We have to hold on. We can't walk past. Okay, so we're talking like in an academic journal.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy to me.
A lot of them are
way
ghostwritten.
worse. That's way worse than ghostwriting some kid's paper for his Lit 101 class. I
don't do it anymore, but
well, it's not
yeah.
on you. It's on the person
Yeah.
paying you to do it. That's your work. What are you talking about? What?
But it happened.
What?
I'm just so blasé about it happened. But I feel like the more I got into teaching and the deeper I got with learning about plagiarism and everything like that, the more my opinions on it became I'm kind of indifferent. Obviously plagiarism is wrong, but there are also times where, I don't know. I don't think plagiarism is right, but I think ghostwriting can have a place. And I'm kind of going to get into that when we are talking about ghostwriting specifically, because I do think there are times and places where it's more acceptable than others. Academic journal, not so much. Probably shouldn't have done that.
I agree with everything you just said.
I don't
I'm still
really have a
reeling.
problem. Okay, so with the academic journal though, were you still like factually correct?
Yeah.
Then you're not really harming anyone.
That's not my problem. My problem is in academia, like it's so much more, like a person's name weighs so much more than in other fields. So whoever that these articles are published under, like they're accredited with them. They're
Right.
seen as, if not experts, then at least knowledgeable about these things. And they may be, but not enough to write a paper about it. And so that's my thing. With fiction, it's telling a story. It's important. It's what we do every day. It does not carry the same social weight as ghostwriting an academic journal article.
Well, and I think also, like with an academic, like I was part of a group of collaborators too. So I think that's also very different than like ghostwriting a fiction book because it's usually one or two people and not a team. I think that's where some of my like wishy-washiness on the topic comes from, because like I can verify that I was being factually accurate and I was doing what I was supposed to do and like intending to do. But you can't always verify that for the rest of the group of collaborators.
I guess I'm just clutching my pearls because I like never had thought about that happening ever in a million years in academic works, and that is just like, that's just crazy to me. I don't know, like I'm sitting here flabbergasted.
The numbers of ghost written works actually is absolutely insane. Like I think you're gonna kind of be shocked by some of those numbers.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
Ew.
So, well, really quickly before I kind of like deep dive into ghostwriting and AI, on a scale of like most ethical to least ethical, where do you rate plagiarism, ghostwriting, and the use of AI? Like before talking about it together.
Like each of them separately?
Like if you order the three of them in order from most to least ethical.
Ghostwriting is the most ethical.
Yes.
Because you're asking permission, and permission is being given. I kind of feel like AI and plagiarism are on the same level, because AI,
I
guess
some thoughts.
AI is slightly more ethical than straight up plagiarism, because when you're plagiarizing, you know you're plagiarizing. When you're using an AI, some are ethically sourced, so they say. Some say that they only use like open source material, but there are a lot of people who like will post things on like Wattpad or something. First of all, can you imagine an AI trained by Wattpad? Hilarious. I love that for
I
us.
love it.
I
Yes.
need it. You know what? I do need a fan fiction like writing machine where
Yeah.
you put in two characters and it's just for you. It's just a
Yeah.
private form of entertainment.
Yeah.
Sort of like character AI, but you're not doing anything. You're just putting in the two characters and it spits out a scene.
Ooh, you could do like
Trained
the
from
two
Wattpad.
characters. You could be like the two characters and like the trope that you want, and you can give like a very
Yes.
brief description of a situation if you're
Yes.
feeling a little squirrely.
And if we could somehow connect it to like ChatGPT, it could access the internet and be able to know what these characters are and what they're from. I don't know. It sounds like $1 billion cost on that one.
Maybe.
I do have thoughts about ranking these things.
Okay.
As we were speaking, I was thinking about AI, and to be so real, ghostwriting and AI are treated the same way by the people using the services. Like, if I don't want to write my paper for college, right? And I'm a loser, okay? And I'm a loser. I'm going to go to AI and go, hey, write me this paper. And it's going to write me a bad paper, right? That doesn't matter to me because I'm a loser. So I'm going to submit it. If I'm a little bit less of a loser, I'll go to someone who I can trust and I know that they are capable of writing this paper. And I'll say, hey, I'll give you $150 if you write this paper for me. It's the same thing. It's the same action. You are claiming ownership over something you didn't write, and you have permission to use both of them.
So for me, that's where the AI issue comes in, because AI doesn't always get permission to sample the work that it samples.
Right, but the burden does not fall on you as the person who pulled the things from the AI.
I mean, it's on you to use an AI that has ethical sourcing.
I believe you should never use AI for writing ever, but if you're going to, I think, at least legally, the burden of fair use, copyright, and everything else is fully on the sources where the AI takes from. Like, why is it taking from something that's copywritten or something that's not fair use? You know what I mean? Like, it
Yeah.
wouldn't
Like,
have
why?
been copywritten if they hadn't pulled copywritten work.
Right.
And so that's not you as a consumer, because you don't know. I don't know what Chat GPT has going on in its system, where it's pulling from. I'm lazy enough to have AI write my paper. I'm not going to Google that. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't like either of them. I don't like any of this. I mean, ghostwriting fiction, there are instances where I think it's fine. But anywhere else, I don't like any of these things.
Okay, so I do kind of want to use that to like jump forward into talking about ghostwriting before we hit AI, because of what you're saying about ghostwriting fiction. So with ghostwriting, the dictionary definition is to write a speech, book, etc. for another who is the presumed or credited author. Obviously, you're taking somebody else's work, and then outwardly, right, you're presenting it to everybody else as, this is my work. There are already some commonalities to plagiarism in terms of that, except that with plagiarism, there is no consent, like Sarah had pointed out, but there is some consent, or there should be, with ghostwriting. And I did like kind of a deep dive because I was curious, like what people say is like the benefit of having a ghostwriter. So benefits of having a ghostwriter, and these I did look at specifically like book ghostwriting, since that's kind of our focus. The benefits of having a ghostwriter with a book specifically. Some say that ghostwriters might produce a better work. Some say that ghostwriters may save their clients time because the client isn't the one making that time commitment. The ghostwriter is. And then some also say that ghostwriters may end up saving their clients money in the long run in terms of editing, because a ghostwriter is going to have a better grasp of language and the way that we put words onto a page to tell a story. So there may be less work required in that editing phase, which also contributes to saving them time, theoretically. My thought on this is that if you need somebody else to write a better book for you, maybe you shouldn't be writing a book. And I know that that is probably a hot take. Everybody has ideas and you should be able to share them, but maybe not in a published format.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And that may be misinformed, but I really don't care as of right now, because the ghostwriters are talented enough to simply write their book under a pen name, is my thing. And I know there's so much nuance that I'm simply ignoring. I know that. I do. Everyone, please don't yell at me. I know. But in the grand scheme of things, why isn't that the way? Like, why is someone else saying, ooh, what if you wrote a book about two girls going missing and they find friendship? Whatever. And then someone writes a fantastic book about that topic. And then the person who had the initial idea gets all of the money? Gets all of the money, all of the fame, all of the fortune?
Well, yeah. And I want to know Sarah's thought on this, because she's actually done it.
Yeah.
And I've not ghostwritten a book. I've only done papers. So I'm curious.
Yeah, so I have a very interesting take on this compared to what you have said so far. I personally am a great ghostwriter, not because of my skill, but because I am not good at coming up with ideas. So for me, it really benefits me to have someone hand me an idea and say, okay, I want you to include these 4 tropes. I want the female character to be like this. I want the male main character to be like this. I've only ever ghostwritten romance. I feel like that's the easiest genre to write in general. But it was really helpful for me to have a collaborator in just the coming up with ideas process, because then as I was writing it, I had someone giving me feedback and saying like, this aligns with my vision, this doesn't align with my vision. And coming from a filmmaking background as well, what you're saying about, well, the person with the ideas gets all the credit. Yeah, like that's just how it works. Like when you think about a movie, you think about the director. You don't think about the production designer. You don't think about the editor. You don't think about the costume designer. You just think about the director, and the director gets all the credit, even at the highest level of involvement. So I just read a book about Lord of the Rings and the process of getting those films made. Very fascinating if anyone is interested. But Peter Jackson gets so much credit for like being this incredible auteur director. He was not physically making the costumes. He was not physically making the props. He had an extremely talented team of people working under him who used his ideas, created those things, and he just signed off. He just checked them off and said, good, that can go in my movie. So unfortunately, that is kind of just the way that the creative industry can go sometimes, is that when it's a team effort, one person is going to put their name on it and get all the credit.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely see like having a background too of like having gone to acting school and everything. Like I do see that side of things, but they're still in the credits, you know, like like the costume designers are still like listed in the credits. So even if broadly speaking, we're like talking about like Peter Jackson or Steven Spielberg or whoever, like there's still that evidence that that person can say like, I did the costuming here. My name is right here. Like take a look at it. And they can put that on their resume. And that's not always the case with ghostwriting.
And also, I mean, this is a good analogy and I don't want to tear it apart, but directors are way more involved than whoever's pitching the idea. Like the client of a ghostwriter is way less involved than a director of a film.
It depends. Because a client for a ghostwriter could be really involved, and a director for a film can also be super checked out.
Right. But more often than not, I feel like that's the exception of the rule. Like if a director is super checked out, the movie's gonna suck. That's why there's a director.
You end up being Alec Baldwin.
I do. Oh, jeez. Too soon?
Listen, it's been coming for years. He also injured somebody during Macbeth, so
yeah,
we knew it was gonna happen.
I will say this, in my dream world, if you're using a ghostwriter, be involved is what because if you're gonna take all of the credit, I would like to know that you had more to say than here's the plot outline or whatever,
right,
or the premise, or here's the characters. Like some more substance would be nice. I also think that my big problem is the lack of credit, and I understand that it's already established, permission was given, and the expectation is there won't be credit, but I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. I would rather anything like the ghostwriter's name be like inside the cover or something, or at least getting substantially more of the royalties, because with books it's the writing that sells the book, or it's the writing that garners the fan base.
The interesting thing about that is that in a way, ghostwriters, depending on the project, right? Some ghostwriters, if you're really good and you are in high demand, you can make upwards of like $300,000 a year. And in that case, you are probably getting paid much better than any royalties payout from the author.
Okay, maybe I changed my mind.
In terms of like financial contribution given to the ghostwriter, they are pretty well compensated. And there's also a push among ghostwriters to have a with. So like by J.J. Rosewood with Sarah Cole, for instance. That way, there is that awareness of, hey, somebody else worked on this with me. But there are also some ghostwriters who are perfectly happy just getting a mention in the acknowledgements. So it definitely does depend on the writer themselves. One specifically that I'm spacing on her name right now, but I was reading an interview with her and she was talking about the NDA clauses that are oftentimes used. And they're obviously like NDAs are there for a good reason, especially if you're ghostwriting. One of the examples that I had read about was somebody who ghost wrote Spare with Prince Harry. And so the Duke of Sussex. So in that regard, right, like that NDA is in place for a reason. These are very high profile people. The problem with that, though, that somebody had pointed out is that not only can you not say, I did the work on this, you can't put it on your resume, you also can't help promote something that you contributed to that you may be very proud about. So it does also limit the reach of a project because there's only so much that you can say to encourage people to buy it who, like, you can't tell certain people like, hey, buy this. I helped write it, because then that gets into weird places. Whereas if you are credited with it or even, as a with, then you can encourage more people to buy it who may not have bought it just because they want to support you and the work that you've done. And by connection, it's supporting that author and their book.
That's true. But in my personal experience, that didn't really get in the way because, like, I have a much smaller following than the person who hired me. Like, they have the money and the resources to properly market this book. Like, me promoting it would have gotten them, like, 5 more sales. And that they don't need my help. Like, the books that I have written and published for myself have fewer reviews and fewer sales than the books that I ghost wrote, just because I didn't have the means. I don't have the means to do that. And also, if you have the money to pay a ghostwriter, you have the money to pay for good marketing. So
yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good point. I'm thinking from the indie author, like the tiny indie author side of things of like helping with promotion. But it was just really interesting to hear that this person was saying they really wish they could have helped with promotion and they couldn't because of the NDA.
Yeah, that has been kind of a struggle for me because the person that I worked for actually wouldn't even tell me what the books were called or when they were published because of the NDA, which didn't make a lot of sense to me. I guess it was just an insurance policy on their part to make sure that, like, well, if I don't know the books exist, then I can't, like, accidentally promote them.
Right.
But I did look for them and I did find them. And sometimes I do like read the reviews because if they're complimenting the writing, that's my work. But they don't know that they're complimenting me. They think they're complimenting somebody else. So that can be a little bit difficult. But I mean, I'm still getting positive feedback, even if it isn't directed at me, and even if it was, even if my client tried to hide it from me, that feedback is still there, and it does still build my ego a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also, I was gonna say, it bothers me, like what bothers me most. I don't mean to be such a hater of ghostwriting. I really don't. It's rubbing me the wrong way today for some reason. But what bothered me the most is you can't on your resume or whatever say that you've written that book, but you can say you were a ghostwriter and did so successfully. Maybe you can give some metrics of sales or ratings or something.
But you could just make that stuff up too.
Yeah.
You could, and that is my problem, because you're not getting credited, you're not getting royalties most of the time, and you can't use that to better your career in a social sense. In a technical sense, of course, you've just written a book. Now you have experience of having written a book, but that doesn't get you anywhere socially, right? Like, you can't put that on the back of your debut novel. If you write one for yourself, you can't say, well, I've written other books, so I'm tried and tested, and like that, I struggle with that. And I know that ghostwriters sign up for this, right? And clearly I'm the type of person who could not be a ghostwriter, because I very much so, I'm like, you're not taking anything. I don't care if you're paying me money. Like, my name is very important to me. And I'm sure it's important to, like, oh my God, I'm really goofing this up. I'm really just making a lot of statements. But do you get what I'm saying? Like, that's a struggle for me to like wrap my brain around.
Well, so for me, the books that I wrote are bad. Like, they're not to my taste. They're not
so true.
They're not quality literature. Like, I wrote them because that's what I was paid to write. I would not have sought them out. I would not read them if I hadn't written them. And honestly, it's not something that I would want my name attached to, because it's very basic, tropey, formulaic smut. And there is a place for that. People love it. There's a market for it, but it's not my market.
Right. It's not what you want to be known for.
Yeah. So I am perfectly happy to not be attached to this work in any way whatsoever.
So that's actually an interesting take on it also. And when you put it like that, I'm primarily a fantasy writer and like romance sometimes, but primarily like fantasy, high fantasy, retellings, all that jazz. But if I were to ghostwrite, I would not ghostwrite in that realm because it's too close to what I'm doing. I would totally, after watching one episode of Bridgerton, ghostwrite like a historical romance Regency era book because it's not my cup of tea, but also then any negative criticism doesn't hurt me as much because I'm not so close to it.
That's a really good point, because I lean more towards horror and the macabre of it all. So for me, like writing fantasy or writing romance, even any sort of romance, would be something I probably wouldn't publish under my name, period. I'd probably use a pen name. So like if I were to write a romance that wasn't in any way, shape, or form macabre, I would use a pen name. So that does make more sense to me. Interesting.
Some just fun little numbers, not to encroach on Sarah's vibe.
No, you brought these here for me, and I appreciate it.
I did. I really did. I like when I saw the statistics, I was like, oh, this is interesting to me, just like because I'm researching it. But I was like, Sarah's going to like these numbers. I'm going to include them.
You're right. Thank you.
So traditional publishing houses have openly admitted that up to 70% of all books published are ghostwritten, and nearly 99% of all books published by artists, celebrities, politicians, people who are like, Prince Harry, are ghostwritten, either in part or in whole.
I believe that.
Which is insane.
I knew about the memoir one.
In my opinion, that's where I'm kind of like, well, that might be a time where a ghostwriter could be used. Like, for instance, who's the king right now? What's his name? Charles?
I think so, yeah.
Princess Diana's ex-husband, as he should rightfully be introduced at all times. He's like, he's so old that like, yeah, maybe you get a ghostwriter on that because he probably can't like create coherent like chapters of work, but he could maybe dictate things to you. And then as the ghostwriter, you put it together, whatever. That makes sense to me. But like, should Kate Middleton have a ghostwriter? Probably not. She's got bigger fish to fry right now anyway.
Is she a good writer?
I don't know, but like, she's young enough.
I think if you're not a good writer, you shouldn't be writing a book. But if you have a story to tell, you can hire someone else to tell it for you. But give them credit. I do.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
though.
The issue. Yeah.
Like in these kind of instances,
and that should be a biography.
Yeah,
exactly.
Not an autobiography.
Right. Yeah.
Because at that point, this is my problem with that, and this is where I'm getting to the meat of the issue. I think for me, it feels like lying. You're lying. You are telling lies, and I don't like that. That's my problem. Okay, scratch everything I've said up until this point. I don't like the fact that it's lying, especially the sort of memoir side of things, because they're using the first person. They're talking about their life events, but they are not. Someone else is. Just make it a biography. Just make it a work dedicated to talk about an artist's work. What are you talking about? Why? Like, I don't care about whether or not Michelle Obama sat down and wrote her book. Someone I would care just as much, which is very little, by the way, whether or not someone else wrote it about Michelle Obama or Hillary Clinton or whatever else. It doesn't do it for me. Like, because now everything I'm reading feels disingenuous. And the fact that 70% of all books,
at least like from traditionally published, right?
That grosses me out.
So that kind of like nice little segue into the ethics issue of ghostwriting. I actually read this really fascinating article from 1996. So ghostwriting and the ethics of ghostwriting has been a conversation for a really long time. And the article was by Linda Riley and Stuart Brown, called Crafting a Public Image, an Empirical Study of Ethics of Ghostwriting. And they kind of look at it from like a speech standpoint, which I did think was a really interesting angle to take. Between that and some of the other research that I'd done, the biggest ethics issue comes down to trust, because readers do want to be able to trust the author or trust the speaker. In publishing and writing, editing specifically, we talk a lot about building a contract with the reader, and that contract is essentially trust. So you're writing to get your reader to buy into the story and stick with that story. And a lot of times that comes from knowing, especially as you're reading the second or third or fourth book, knowing that author, and knowing that you can trust that author, that they're going to give you a good story. And the same is with this article they talked about with speech writing, that audiences want to be able to trust the person who is speaking. They want to know that if the president is saying something or the CEO of a company is saying something, that the speeches that are being delivered are something that they have said, and like they're wanting to authentically talk to you about these things. But the problem is with both of these, it can come down to they don't have the time, or they don't know how to say things correctly. And this can feel like a cop-out to authenticity. And that can also be really frustrating from a reading standpoint. If I'm reading a book by Stephanie Meyer, right, and I find out it was ghostwritten, but I really love her writing, that can feel like a betrayal, because that can feel like, well, who's writing this? Like, I don't have that connection anymore.
I'm having a thought. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Like, okay, so this is thinking about the biographies, thinking about the speeches. If what they're saying is resonating with you, why does it matter who said it? Because presumably, if the president is saying a thing in a speech, well, that's a different issue, because that's all about like marketing and like manipulation and whatever.
And I'll be talking about that because I have thoughts on that specifically.
Yeah, that's like kind of a separate issue. But with the author, you don't know them personally. With the biographies, you don't know these people personally. You're developing these parasocial relationships with these people. But like, I don't care if Michelle Obama actually said what her book says. I understand how it could feel like a betrayal in that specific scenario, because it's being presented as her words, and then it's like, oh, just kidding, they weren't. But if I found out that Stephanie Meyer's books had been ghostwritten, I wouldn't care, because the books are still good. The books still mean a lot to me. The books were still enjoyable. And to me, the value comes from the thing itself, not the name that's put on it. But I also think I am in the minority in that respect.
Well, so I did... Sorry, go on, Thyme.
All right. Okay, I guess I will go on. I do understand what you're saying. Like, I see what you're seeing, and I understand it. My big thing is, and I'm about to be hypocrite because I'm about to talk about speeches in the same way you just talked about books, but with biographies, with autobiographies, with memoirs, that is such a personal, like, the author of that is reaching out in an intimate way. That's the point, right? That's the selling point of a memoir or of an autobiography versus a biography, right? Biographies are more like nonfiction situations. They're basically textbooks, right? Whereas an autobiography is, I'm telling you a story about my life personally. This is from me. And so to find out that 99% of those are not autobiographies, it just changes the genre, or it changes the medium for me personally. I don't read any of these because I don't read nonfiction, and that's not true. Yes, I do, but I don't read memoirs. But I'm sure for a lot of people who solely read autobiographies and memoirs, because there's a lot of people like that, that does affect how they think about that. My thing with speeches, on the other hand, as someone with a communication degree, is that is fully the point of having a speechwriter, right? Because they're not called ghostwriters in that field. They're called speechwriters, or they're called PR people, or any sort of, like, it's a job that everyone knows who wrote the speech. We know who wrote the president's speech. We know their voice, the press secretary, if you will. Like, we know who's doing those things. So it's entirely different to me, because it's also, no one told Michelle Obama to write the book. The president has to give a speech. That's part of the job. But the president also has to defend the country and make laws and decisions, and, like, it's just different to me. They're different fields. Even, like, there's no real connection there beyond the fact that you are taking credit for someone else's words. But I don't even think people who give speeches are taking credit for them.
Right.
Everyone knows. And so, at the very least, it's an open secret.
Well, so I think that you've just touched on a really important point. You just said everybody knows. You know, because you are educated. You are very smart. A lot of people do not know these things. A lot of people don't care about these things. And when they find out, their whole worldview gets shifted. But, like...
And that was the interesting thing.
You're just smarter than other people. That's what I'm saying.
You are.
Okay. Yeah. You're telling me people who don't have comm degrees, or people who haven't watched Madam Secretary, don't know about this?
That is exactly what I'm telling you. Yes.
Wait, okay.
Yeah.
And I know that question sounded like a joke, and it kind of is, but I'm also genuinely surprised, because to me, I feel like my whole life I've known that. I feel like when I was 9 years old and Barack Obama was doing his little State of the Union thing, I was like, he clearly didn't write that. He's the president.
The reason I brought up this article specifically was because that, to me, is common knowledge also, like knowing about speechwriters. But as I was reading it, it became very clear, even though this is a almost 30-year-old article, it's very clear that there are a lot of people who are not informed on that. And so that's why I thought it was important to bring it up, because there are also equally a lot of people who are not informed about ghostwriting, who that trust thing, like, that will change their view. And when I was, like, doing all the research for this, I did kind of have the thought of, like, why does any of this matter? Like, ultimately, why does it matter if something is ghostwritten? And I think for me personally, what it comes down to is not necessarily the parasocial relationship between, like, author and reader, but more like we put certain authors on pedestals and we credit them and we talk about their critical acclaim and things go viral. I mean, imagine finding out tomorrow that A Court of Thorns and Roses was completely ghostwritten by somebody living in, like, the middle of Omaha.
That would be bonkers.
It would be bonkers. And I would be really pissed, because I would want to be crediting that person. I, as a reader, would want to be able to say, like, to tell that person, you did so good. Like, this book has touched so many people and brought so many people together and, like, has created this, like, whole love of fairy porn and, like, removed the stigma or whatever. But you can't tell that person, because...
But they know.
Right.
And even if they know, though, it's something, I don't know, it's something about, like, needing to give credit. And I don't know if it's because I was a teacher, and so, like, I'm so big on, like, give people credit.
It might be that for me, because I've gone to a lot of therapy about internal versus external validation. You don't need the external validation as the writer.
Just call me out on the podcast. Hot damn.
Sorry, shit.
No, I am kind of joking, but, like, that is, as you were talking about this, I was realizing, like, oh, that is why I feel this way, is because I have been to a lot of therapy, and, like, one of the things that I've been working on is seeing my inherent worth and realizing my worth based on my values, not on other people. So like, I don't care if people don't give me credit, or if people are leaving reviews crediting somebody else for the work that I did. I can look at that and still know I'm the one who did this. And also, you know, my fiance isn't bound by the NDA. I told him about the books that I wrote, and I do have other people that I can like share it with, but you know, you shouldn't need to. But that's the therapy talking. That's a separate conundrum.
All right, well, Mom and Dad, can you just call me real quick and tell me that you love me when you're listening to this episode? Like, pause right now, call me and tell me you love me, and then maybe I'll have different views.
No, because you don't need that. That's what I'm saying.
No, I really don't. I mean, I know my parents love me and everything, but I don't know. Like, I just feel so strongly about giving credit where credit is due, which is also part of why I stopped ghostwriting to begin with. I don't know.
I'm still reeling with like the not everyone knows about speechwriters thing. That really just kicked me in the face. And now that I know that, it's changing my opinion on ghostwriting, because I didn't know that 70% of all traditionally published books were ghostwritten, nor did I know that 99% of memoir books were. I didn't know that. I had no idea. I knew that a lot of them were. No idea it was that many.
You would think that people would know.
Right. Like I would think people would know about speechwriting.
But
so
why? Why would we know?
because it's a
No,
job.
saying,
It's
like,
on the government website. Like it's
people who's looking at that. It's
But
all,
I'm just saying,
it's all
I thought
marketing.
people would know because I just thought people would know because I knew before I had a comm degree. Like I just,
It's
I wasn't that
all
much of a
really good
political
marketing.
nerd.
Not everybody is willing to interrogate their reality.
I just feel like if you're listening to this, maybe do interrogate your reality. Interrogate? Yes. Maybe do interrogate your reality a little bit. Because I've known for 10 plus years about speechwriting and how every time I hear a speech, it was not written by the person saying it for the most part. I don't care. Like when I hear those things, I'm like, wow, whoever wrote that speech was really good.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing if you've had 10 years or however much time to cope with how prevalent ghostwriting is, you'd probably feel similarly about that. It's like, wow, whoever wrote this book, great job. And then that's all you got to do. Because even though I could find out who wrote the speech that Trump said in 2020, I don't need to look them up. I don't care. I don't care that much ever. And
I realize that I'm over here about like, I need credit where credit is due, but then like I told Sarah, I don't want my name on my book cover.
Right.
Yeah, like-
right.
What are you even
Episode
talking
one.
about? Well, and that's also so interesting. Is like so many writers write under a pen name anyway, myself included. So like,
Yeah.
what's that? Like, because if someone picks
Right.
up one of my books, they're gonna be like, "Wow, Noah Brooks wrote this really cool book." Like, that's not my name. Like,
Right.
Right.
But you are Noah Brooks.
I am, but like, I'm also not.
Like no one
And
else is writing under that name.
That's
And no one's
probably
taking
true.
credit. Rather, no one's taking credit for your book published under Noah Brooks.
That is true.
If y'all were heated,
I've
if
got
Time
thoughts on this
specifically
one.
was heated, yeah. So the dictionary definition of AI is the capability of computer systems or algorithms to imitate intelligent human behavior. So I think the biggest difference so far between ghostwriting and AI is that imitation piece, because obviously if you're ghostwriting, you're not having to imitate. We know how to write. We know how to emote. And I mean, to a degree, we've all been using AI to some degree for years. We use Grammarly. We use the grammar check in Google Docs or Microsoft Word. All of that is considered a form of artificial intelligence. But there are huge limits to AI. And I think that the limits are part of what make people have ethical issues with artificial intelligence. So first, it's rule-based. So all AI output is derived from various other sources, and there's no fresh information. You're not just going to plug something into an AI and it's going to give you original thought. It can only pull information from things that it's already been fed. My hot take on this is that it doesn't create anything new. The same way that authors don't really create anything new. We're all just using the same tropes, the same character archetypes, the same different types of structures, and shuffling it around. We're all singing the same alphabet, just some of us are doing it backwards and some of us are scrambling it up.
Sure.
And so it's really just reconfiguring, which is what we do already as storytellers in general. I mean, there is no original story. There's no first story. I know some people listening to this are gonna be like, actually, if you look in Genesis, no, okay? There is
Not
no
Genesis.
original. AI also has a complete lack of emotion. So this is like one of the big things is that AI cannot replicate human emotion. Now, I'm not saying that it is fully impossible, but at this time, it can't do it. It does not have the capacity to emote, to understand and express that emotion, and then convey that through writing or art generation or whatever it is that you're asking it from. An example of this is if you were to go to ChatGPT and ask it to describe a scenario through a specific emotion, it can't do it because it does not understand the complexity of human emotion. So that aspect, I think, makes AI not good writing for for, a short story or whatever. Because whatever a story is, the thing that really draws people in isn't necessarily the technical aspect of it, unless you are somebody who's in that field. What draws you in is like that emotional pull that you get from the story. AI is also incredibly easily corruptible because it can only output what's input. If you're not inputting things that are verified, if you're just throwing random stuff in there, if you're throwing Wattpad in there and saying it's like a well-published book or whatever, that does become problematic. And it becomes problematic because the world that we live in right now, where we're quote unquote fake news is surrounding us constantly, we have to reevaluate everything at all times. We have to question everything at all times. And so because it's so corruptible, you do have people putting in false information and then other people receiving that false information and spreading that misinformation, which then can also lend itself to a higher risk of plagiarism because it is still drawing from very specific sources. And with this, there's no internal reporting or whistleblowing. You can't like go to the AI and be like, I received some false information from your platform the other day. Like there's no correcting an AI. There's no improving it unless you're working on the AI production team. And so it is even more impossible to give credit where credit is due through AI than with ghostwriting. A little fun number before we kind of talk about it is that experts believe that by 2068, all tasks performed by a human being, including writing, will end up being 99% completed by AI at a rate of equal to or better than a human being, which I have issues with. But I want to hear y'all's thoughts first.
I have many. I have so many. One, I'll start from the back up. I do believe that's that theory. I believe that the truth will be close to that. Because think about how far away 2068 is, and then think about where AI was in 2019. So it's just a given, honestly. We've sort of opened Pandora's box here with making AI generation beyond spell check and grammar check publicly accessible. When we did that, we made it so by 2068, almost everything is going to be AI. Or rather, legislation will probably happen at some point where it's like you have to identify, you have to state, this is fully written by a human, this is AI assisted, this is whatever. And I don't think that legislation will be easily passed. It might never get passed because profit, hello. But it's going to be one of those two things where either everything is AI, at least in some way, shape, or form, or we're going to get a nice little like parental advisory sticker on books saying like written by AI, or on film saying this uses AI generated art or graphics or whatever. So I do see a lot of like truth in that based on what I know. I also want to say that with emotion, it can't feel, but it can make you think it feels, or rather it can say the right words that I would say if I were feeling an emotion. It may not do a bang up job in the way that I would, because I've been living with these emotions for however many years. However, humans have been writing about those emotions for so many more years than I've been alive. So if it had a better algorithm or a better source to pull from, maybe it would do a way better job than I would of describing what grief and anger feel like, right? Because as humans, our pitfalls come from the fact that sometimes we can't describe how we feel in a correct way or a way that feels accurate to us. And I think that right now maybe it can't, but in 6 months it probably can.
Well, and there are different types of AIs too, and one of them is LLM, which is language learning models, I believe, or large language model. Those AIs are being trained through human writing to eventually be able to mimic human writing more closely, because right now it still is very much robotic.
Yes, and we see those models being used in all sorts of technology now. On Amazon, if you go to buy something and you go look at the reviews, a lot of times there's a little box right above the reviews that say, oh, people who bought this item thought that this was good and this was good and this was a little shaky, but overall people really like this product. And it sounds like that, and it's AI generated. Or you go to Google and you search something, now it's an AI thing pulling from the results that came up. And that one, I don't know if y'all have seen anything about this, the memes that have come from it, but it's full of misinformation. The Google AI stuff, it's like insane. But people who don't know, just like the people who don't know about speechwriters, they're going to see that and go, oh yes, giraffes do live in Antarctica or whatever. And so that is my problem, is that if you just think for a second outside of the creativity part of it, politically playing a very dangerous game, because AI, I mean, deep fakes were a big thing in 2014, 2016,
Yeah.
and that is using AI. And now we're getting to a point where it's gonna be almost impossible to tell. That is so dangerous. That is so scary. I am terrified, because you can also use AI to mimic someone's voice, right? If you have enough, like us, for example, right now, we're recording this podcast episode by episode, uploading it to the internet. Someone could pull these and upload them to AI, like to a machine, and get our voices rendered very accurately with the amount of content we're giving them. They can then use an LLM to think of something to say, and it will say it in our voice. That's the danger.
Wasn't there like that whole credit card scam a couple of years ago where that was happening?
Yep, and it's still happening, and it's going to keep happening. It's going to get more and more difficult to tell. That's where my concern ends. That's where it like ends. It starts with, I think it's absolutely abhorrent that people are going to AI and saying, hey, go ahead and write me a children's book. Great, cool. And then they go to another AI and say, hey, go ahead and generate me a bunch of pictures for a children's book about this. And then they smush them together and they go to Amazon, which will print books to sell for you, and then they sell them. And that recently, like last year or 2 years ago, was banned from Amazon's site, which great, but it happened a lot. It happened a lot. You see it with notebooks on Amazon because it's the same thing. You see it with a bunch of stuff on Amazon, on AliExpress, on whatever, because they're combining drop shipping with AI creation to make as much money off of the lowest quality product they can.
Well, that is unfortunately just the nature of capitalism, is trying to find the highest profit margin possible, and that means cutting corners wherever you can. I agree that it's a problem, but with all the things that you mentioned, my perhaps foolishly optimistic hope is that it will sort of become self-destructive. Like, it'll be an Ouroboros effect of like AI keeps producing incorrect and crappy information, which then gets fed back into the AI, and on and on and on and on and on, until everyone recognizes the AI has been rendered useless by its own ineptitude. And that may or may not happen, because as long as humans are still creating things, there will still be quality things to pull from. But I do think that eventually there is the possibility that the cheaper and crappier AIs will kind of destroy themselves.
I've heard that theory, and it makes a lot of sense to me, because especially with the art ones, the ones that generate graphics, because the art community is so like up in arms, and rightfully so, about it. They've been feeding it crap for, it's got to be a year now at this point, and it's already starting to be seen in the images that are generated. So my only thing is with the writing one, there is so much written word on the internet that was put there before AI was around, like from the 90s, from the early 2000s, from the 2010s. Like, it's gonna take a lot longer for that to happen, and I think at some point the developers of these things are going to find a way around it. For art, no, that's gonna AI art generation on a commercial basis from a user perspective, that's going to be done in less than 5 years.
I mean, I think the only real solution is to just take things offline, and we'll probably see the pendulum swing the other way, like in the zine era of early fandom of the queer community. You know, you take your stuff where nobody else can see it and no one can steal it except for the people who you trust. So maybe we'll end up going all the way back to the printing press. Who knows? But I do think that there will always be this is going to sound so dramatic, but I feel like there will always be a faction of humans who value human work over electronic work. I was going to say robots, but AI isn't robots. It's software.
I don't think that's dramatic. I think that's something...
It's true.
Right.
It's just the way I phrased it. It sounds like there's going to be like a robot uprising, but...
I think that's already kind of seen with people who are like quote unquote paper purists, who like prefer a paper book over an ebook. There's always going to be that group of people, and I used to be one of them until I had kids, and then holding a book with a baby, near impossible.
We can hear them, by the way.
I know, I keep yelling at them.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, so kind of a last topic. revisit on a scale of most to least ethical now, after having talked through all of this, where do you rate ghostwriting, plagiarism, and AI?
I would say starting from least ethical to most ethical, AI, plagiarism, ghostwriting.
That is
And the
interesting.
only reason I say that is because it's sort of a pick your battles thing. I would rather you plagiarize another human's perfectly good writing and be a piece of shit in that way than use AI, because that's a bigger problem overall to me.
I think it depends on how the AI is being used. Because if it's just being used as a tool to help you like write an outline for an essay, but then you write the essay yourself, that's perfectly fine, and that's not plagiarism.
I'm looking through the lens of these three things have crafted a complete work.
Mm-hmm.
In that regard, I put plagiarism as more ethical than AI. I use AI. I will say, oh, can you give me a writing prompt for my journaling? Or can you give me 10 movie recommendations for this vibe? And it does. And that it does that job perfectly. And that is the most ethical way of using it. And I think that's fun.
Yeah,
if
like
you
I
need
think
help
using
writing
it
an outline,
as like,
that's fine.
Yeah, use it as a blueprint. Don't build the house with it.
Right. It's not the foundation.
Yeah, it's a tool.
Right. And also,
Like any
by the
other.
way, I wanted to touch on this earlier and then I forgot. With like Grammarly and Google spell check and everything, you will never be able to tell whether something is actually AI generated or not with those programs that like teachers use. They don't work because everyone uses Grammarly. Everyone uses Google spell check and Google Docs. Those words get flagged by the AI detection systems. So you get a lot of false positives. When I was teaching English and I was putting my little students' papers into these programs and checking, so many of them came up as AI, but I know what to look for with my human eyes to tell if something's AI or not. A lot of these were not AI. Also, they're 14-year-olds. They're not doing the whole like, okay, give me the outline. Okay, now I'll paraphrase it and I'll put my own stuff in. They're 14. They're not doing that. If they're using AI, they're saying they put in the prompt I give them and the AI gives them a thing and they take that and they submit it if they're using AI beyond Grammarly and whatnot. So, and I had a bunch of them who did that. I'm like, bestie, this paper says as an AI, I cannot so-and-so. I'm like, you're
joking.
I'm not. I wish I was kidding. I'm not. My 14-year-olds were not bright, okay? And if you're listening to this, yeah, I said it, and I'll say it again. Your writing sucked because it wasn't your writing.
This is why nobody knows about speechwriters.
Well, or because they're putting LOL in their papers, which happen to me all the time.
All the time. Stop that. Stop writing it with your phone, please. It's just crazy. But so I do just want to say, like, you can't use those programs anymore. Well, you never could. They're always going to suck. They don't get it. I hate them. Not as much as I hate AI, but I hate them.
Well, the AI checker is just another form of AI.
Right. And also, I've tested it. I've used AI to write something. I did a little polishing and it flagged as 100% human written. That's not true. So they're really not good.
So if something is flagged as AI, then it's like really AI.
Or it's Google spell check.
But you wouldn't get like 100% AI from Google spell check.
If you used Grammarly, you might. Or if you use Quillbot, which a lot of people use to help like with the phrasing of their writing. Like a lot of students will use that because they feel like they don't have right way of saying the words in the right order.
That's still the AI rewriting though. Like Grammarly doesn't entirely well, I've never used Grammarly Premium, but
it can.
Yeah.
This is what I'll say. Quillbot, I believe, is a valid resource for students who have like some sort of learning problem or hurdle to overcome, because a lot of times it is an issue that is too big to be addressed in class right now. But they're doing the writing, they're just also getting it polished for whatever they're doing. Now, that is not to say that 99% of the people using Quillbot aren't using it because they're trying to take AI writing and make it different AI writing, because that is 99% of the time, but not all the time. So it's just not a safe bet to use these programs. What is a better solution is to learn the hallmarks of AI writing yourself, study it if you're a teacher or an educator or in some field where you need to look at writing, learn what AI writing looks like. It's very identifiable. I can almost always, me, myself, and I get it right if I'm checking. So
well, and it's in the same way you learn, like if you're running something through a plagiarism checker, it's in the same way that as a teacher, you learn what is actually plagiarism and what is just common phrasing, or what is something that people are saying very similarly. That's not necessarily plagiarism.
Right, because like, and you see in a plagiarism checker, if you have a bunch of sources that are cited, your bibliography is all red.
Totally flagged. Yeah.
And it makes it so it looks like your thing is 20% plagiarized when in reality it's 0. So it's safe to just not look at the number. Look at the details. What is it telling you? What specifically is AI or what specifically is plagiarized?
All right. Well, thank you for clocking in for the Witching Hour. To share your opinions on our opinions, head over to Spellbound Publishing House's social media account. All links and information necessary can be found in the show notes. And we'll see you next shift.
Bye.